Okay, hello guys. Hopefully I've gone live. I'm just checking to make sure. So, hi and welcome to Art Live here at Heathlands on a Monday. So usually I am over in our purple bubble, but today I'm doing quite a messy but wonderful art activity, an arts and crafts activity. And it looks like I've got loads of things out to maybe start cooking because I've got the scales and I've got salt and utensils and things. But what we're actually going to do today is we're going to be doing some tie-dyeing. So I'm just going to make sure that everything's working on my computers because I've actually got two computers set up here to do this here today, so that I can keep up with any comments that you guys are making. And yeah, if you've got any questions, you can leave them in the comments and I will do my best to make sure that everything works and goes according to plan. So Mark and I have set up a bit of a different kind of studio setup for you today. So we're working from the kitchen and I have not one but two cameras today. So I've got the second camera, which is this one over here, our web camera, so that when I'm doing the folding for our tie-dye, you guys can see how I'm doing the folding better. Because if you've just got this little area in front of you on the table, it won't be as easy to do. So, myself and the lovely Joy over in Purple Bubble last week, or the week before, decided to do some examples of the type of tie-dyeing that we would do so that I could show you how the tie-dyeing comes out after you've done the dyeing. So once we've done all the folding and we've got the elastic bands on and the thread and things like that, it has to go into the dye for at least an hour. So I won't be able to take it out and show you the results in the live video. So we are going to, I think, clear down and do the folding first, and then I'll show you with each wrap of tie-dye how they come out. I've got 6 different examples here. So, as I say, we are going to be mixing dye and things. So if you want to wear gloves when you're doing your dyeing, that will stop any dye getting onto your skin. It does come off eventually, and I don't mind getting dye on myself, but wear a pair of marigolds, a pair of rubber gloves or vinyl gloves if you don't want to get dye all over yourself. I'll go through the materials that we need for you. So, first things first, you're going to need some dye. So I've got Dylon cold water dye here. Well, I say cold water dye, it's hand dye, so you don't put this through the washing machine. Now the difference with not doing it in the washing machine is that your fabrics don't get agitated. So your tie-dye usually comes out more stable. So we need dye. To fix our dye we need salt, and I've got some scales here to measure out our salt, and some utensils to do that. I've got a jug over by our water boiler because we're going to need some warm water. I might get it from the sink though. You're going to need some fabric or some clothes, whatever you're dyeing, and you need some elastic bands, some strong cotton thread. So I'm using mer-sized embroidery cotton here, which is a twisted cotton. So it's not embroidery thread and it's not sewing thread either. It's a bit stronger and it's a bit thicker than that. And a pair of scissors is useful. So I'm going to move things out of the way for now while we set up and fold our fabric. So we're going to need to keep our thread, our elastic bands and our fabric, and I'll just put these to one side. So these are my examples that Joy and I have already made, and what I'm using today is I've got baby muslin squares because they're basically pre-sewn squares of fabric that take the dye really well because they're 100% cotton. So that's the fabric that we're using. So these could make really nice little scarves for summer, yeah? Or you could use them as very large napkins. You could also buy plain cotton napkins if you wanted to make decorative napkins. You could maybe do greens and reds for Christmas. In fact, I might write that down and we might do some Christmas tie-dye. later in the year. Or you know, you can buy some white clothes. So you could buy some white cotton harem pants or white t-shirts or a white shirt to dye. It will work exactly the same. So one of the things that you should really do before you start is that you should lightly dampen your fabric, which I haven't done that with this. This one's got a stain on it. It won't matter because I'm using blue dye. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to go and get a little bit of warm water. Now I've got a bucket here and my dyeing stick. I hope you can see that. That's got blue dye on the end of it already from the tie-dye that we've already done. And I'm just going to get a little bit of water to dampen our cloth. Now I don't need a lot of water because we only just want them ever so slightly damp. So I'm just going to dip them like that and then squeeze them out thoroughly. So it's literally just had the tiniest bit of water put into it. In fact, when you wring it out, you can't actually wring any water out. So it is literally just damp. Now the other way you can do this is once you've folded them, you can dampen them. But I find that quite tough. But I'll tell you what, we'll do it both ways. And then we'll see which way comes out better. So, I've got 6 examples here because we're going to do 6 different types of folding. 6 different types of tie-dye. So that's 2, and literally all I'm doing is very quickly dipping it in. So I'm not soaking it, I'm not submerging it at all, so it's just ever so slightly damp. Some bits might actually remain dry, and that might create a different effect. So we're halfway there. So I'm just going to check comments to see who's here. Abby, hi, hello. Sorry I didn't say hello earlier. But Mark's on board and saying hello, and Alan, hi, you're watching from Green Bubble. Lovely, I will come and see you after the broadcast, and we'll have a chat and I'll show you the results of the tie-dye. I'm going to be going over to Purple Bubble as well, so I can show Joy her tie-dye too. So yeah, just ever so slightly getting that fabric damp. We don't want it soaking wet. It's just so that when we put the fabric into the dye, it starts to take on the dye really, really quickly. So we're just creating a great big pile of slightly damp muslin here. And I chose baby muslins, as I say, because they're kind of pre-made, pre-sewn cotton squares. But you can dye whatever you want, really. Well, within reason, you know, don't go and get your dad's best shirt. He won't be best pleased about that. But yeah, anything that's cotton, anything that's a natural material will take the dye. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to buy things like polyester or rayon or tencel or anything like that, any man-made fibres, because the dye won't take to the fabric. So things like linen and hemp and cotton are all great to do tie-dye with. And actually thinking about Christmas and doing napkins, I might see if we can get some linen napkins, because that would be really lovely. So last one, I should have pre-dampened these, shouldn't I? But Mark and I were in a bit of a fuss trying to get everything ready for you guys, because we don't normally set up in the kitchen like this. So that's all my cotton, nice and damp. I'm going to put my bucket out of the way and my stick. Make sure that's done. So, as I said, I'll do that because the table's clean. I've got a setup today where I can use 2 cameras. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to this. So hopefully, if I can get this to focus. Is it in focus? If I put a pair of scissors down maybe, my thread. Mark said that we might have this issue with this camera. So, come on. Hopefully it will follow me down and we can get it to focus. So, the first die we're going to do is what's called a random pattern. So to do this, we've got our muslin square, okay? All we're going to do, and it's unfocused again. Come on. Okay, all we're going to do, I think it doesn't like the steel table that much. For our random tie-dye, we're just going to gather our fabric up into a rough ball, like this. And then we're going to get our elastic bands. This might be a new box. Nope. We're going to get our elastic bands and we're just going to put 2 or 3 all around. You can double it over and change the direction. It's gone out of focus again. Come on. Mark, if you can hear me, could you bring down... No, that'll be dirty. I just need something to keep it in focus, basically. Hopefully that'll do it. We'll put a load of elastic bands out. So yeah, I've just randomly scrunched all of my fabric up. And then I'm going to wrap the elastic bands around it a couple of times just to create this really weird ball. So I can show you on here as well. That is our random tie-dye, where we've just scrunched everything up. So we'll leave that to one side. That's our first one. So our second tie-dye today is probably one you'll know really, really well. It's where you pinch, and it's gone again. Follow me down. Right, in focus, in focus, in focus, in focus. Good. I've got some extra elastic bands here that might be a bit finer and a bit smaller. So this is the one where you pinch and create like a little peak in the fabric. And then we put elastic bands around it. And we can kind of make concentric circles by pinching these peaks together. So if I show you from the side, from the top, yeah? And what we're going to do is we're randomly going to put these little peaks all over our fabric. Now you can start in the middle, you can start at the sides, you can have some of your circles going from the middle to the outside, and you can work those elastic bands down to create those circular peaks. Now you want to make sure that your tie-dye is nice and tight. So hopefully you can see there how I'm pinching it. Just looking for smaller elastic bands. So I'm taking a piece of fabric, I'm pinching it, and I'm kind of pulling down from that pinch to create this peak. Making sure that they're nice and tight. And we're going to do that all over nice and quickly. So I'm going to pinch another peak there. And you can do these as big or as small as you like. Pull that through. So you can see our piece of fabric is getting smaller and smaller the more we pinch it together with these peaks for the pattern of the tie-dye. Now I like doing some of them off the sides so that your circles kind of interact with your fabric in a fun way. Trying to make sure I keep my hands in the middle of the cameras for you guys. Work that down. So, I might just put a tiny one in there if I can. I can find the right kind of elastic band. Not matter. There we go. So, that's one side nearly complete. I'm going to do another one here. Probably going to need to do about 3 more with this one, guys. And then I'm probably going to try and switch to just this camera here to show you the folding techniques that we're going to be doing. So, as I say, Joy did an absolutely beautiful job of helping me make the examples a couple of weeks ago. So I'm really looking forward to showing you her work. Okay. Now I was acutely aware that this session will probably take a little bit longer than the other ones usually do, but if you have any questions or you want me to go over anything again, don't hesitate to ask. I will repeat myself, it's fine. And that, hopefully you can see, is our kind of drawn out peaks. There's probably a proper name for this kind of tie-dye, but I can't remember what it is. But it's where you pinch your fabric and pull it up to create this peak, and then you put your elastic bands around. So that one's done now as well. So the next one we're going to go on to is one of our folding examples. So what we're going to do is we're going to lay out our fabric. Hopefully this will stay in focus. So I've got a large piece of fabric here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one corner, and instead of trying to fold it horizontally in half, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it diagonally across to the other corner. Flatten that out. So we end up with this lovely triangle. If your fabric's not perfectly square, it doesn't matter. But, and it's done it again, hasn't it? Come on, camera. There we are. So we'll bring our elastic bands back in. So for this fold, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be folding our fabric along the long triangular edge. So we're going to start at one end, and what we're going to do is we're going to do what's called a concertina fold. So I'm going to switch to second cam only, guys, so hopefully you can see this a bit better. When I say we're going to do a concertina fold, I mean when we fold it up, we're not just going to roll it like this. We're going to fold it over, and then we're going to tuck it back. So maybe I should flip this over to show you what I mean. So when we fold it over one way, we then turn it back on itself underneath. I might do this a little bit shorter, like so. So then we will fold back over the top, like so, and then on that edge we're going to fold it underneath of itself again. And we're going to fold it that way, back over the top, and then underneath of itself again. So, over the top, so fold it over the top, and then we're going to fold it back up under itself. We're going to do that all the way along until we've folded up all of our fabric. So underneath, try and keep everything together and flat over the top. And when you get towards, oh, we've come out of focus again. Right, so when you get towards the end, it becomes a little bit easier and you can kind of just fold the rest of your fabric up. Do it from that side. You all right, Richie?
Yeah.
So just concertina that fabric all the way to the end. Now for this one, we're doing concertina fold, as I say. And once we've got that concertina fold finished, we're going to take an elastic band and we're going to secure it really, really well. Now, obviously when you do this, you're left with an awful lot of quite plain fabric. So what you can do is you can carry on adding elastic bands, because what this will do is it will create stripes in the same direction on your fabric. So I'm going to put one quite close to it, then I think one a little bit further apart. Tie-dyeing. So we've got two cameras working today, Richie. We've got one on the table,
yeah,
and then one at me. At the moment, I've just got the camera pointed at the table so people can see what I'm doing better. Bit of a different setup, which caused us a bit of a headache earlier, but we've got there. Yeah. And I'll just double check on the comments. Oh, fine. So, I've got a couple. Where's that edge gone? Just going to pull that through. I've got a couple of bands, so I've got a narrow stripe, a slightly broader stripe, a really big stripe, and then an open one. What I might do is use one of my tiny little elastic bands. And what I might do is just scrunch up this end in our random tie-dye effect, just to add a little bit of interest to the bottom of this scarf. Like so. So that is our third setup. We're going to bring another piece of fabric through and we're going to do some more folding again. So we've done diagonal concertina folding. Now we're going to do square concertina folding. So this is actually, and come back camera, really doesn't like flat surfaces to focus on. There we go. So this is a really, really, really simple fold. You've got to put your fabric flat on your table and we're going to concertina fold again. We're going to go backwards and forwards all the way along our fabric, like so. Until we get to the end. So we've concertinaed that up. Oh, come on. Come down, come down, come down. Okay, so we've concertinaed it up one way. Now we're going to do it in a square pattern, going the other way. I really, really love the effect of this tie-dye. I think it's really pretty. So, we've basically done like an accordion sandwich, one way and then the other. And we're just going to secure that with an elastic band. One way. Now I will be putting a blog post up with lots of lovely photographs for you guys to be able to see. One the other way. And that elastic band's broken. Just try and flatten that out slightly. Now if you need help with your tie-dye, don't worry, someone can help you. Please excuse me, somehow I have nicked myself. I'm just going to go and grab a plaster. This is not normally the kind of job, guys, where I would say you need to have an elastoplast on hand, but this is Helen we're talking about, and I am notoriously accident prone. So even working with fabric and elastic bands, apparently I can cut myself. So working in the kitchen, we always have to have our blue elastoplasts on hand. I'm doing this because I don't want to get anything on my fabric. Take that up, tidy that up in a bit. Okay, so going back to our folding, we've got 2 more folds to learn. So I've done our square pattern. Now going to do a similar fold. Come on. There we go. So we're going to concertina our fabric up again in a similar way, working all the way along, pinching that fabric together. But instead of concertinaing it back the other way, we're going to do something slightly different. So I'm just going to press that down, and what we're going to do is we're going to do it diagonally. So we're going to fold over diagonally and tuck it under itself. Then we're going to fold back over diagonally and tuck under itself. And we're going to keep going all the way along, like so. So just make sure I'm doing this right. Tuck under itself and triangular. Tuck under itself and back triangular. Tuck under it. Do you know, I'm going to start that again. I don't think I did that particularly well. Working too quickly. And get this back in focus for you. So, I'm going to fold over, tuck under, hello Mark. That's okay. Having terrible trouble with this cam not focusing properly. Keep having to redo it. So I've folded it a bit broader to make the triangles easier to do. So we've got it nice and flat. Come on, camera. There. So we're going to fold over triangularly, fold it under itself, and then fold back over. So you're creating like a sandwich cut on a diagonal. And we're going to work that all the way along. Like so. So now that we've got that all set up, I'm just going to put a couple of bands around each of the points to secure it. And that is our triangular one. So, the last one we've got to fold is the most interesting, I think. It's called a snowflake or a mandala fold. And this one is the one that's slightly more interesting. So, get our camera back in focus. And Helen's hopefully going to remember how to do the folding on this properly. So, we're going to fold our fabric diagonally, like so. And then I can't remember how to do this, guys. Give me 1 second. I'm going to bring you back to the studio and I'm going to have a quick look at my mandala folding. Because you want to make sure that you fold this up absolutely correctly. So I'm going to fold this in half and then fold it in half again. So I'll switch this back to both cameras for us. So hopefully, come on, follow me down. Perfect. So hopefully you can see. I've folded it in half and I've folded it in half again. And then I'm going to fold in 8ths. And I think I fold that one back that way. And then that one back that way. And then I'm going to fold it into a 16th. So I'm going to fold this point this way. And don't worry, I will put loads of pictures on the blog. And loads of instructions, written instructions. And then we're going to fold this one back this way. So you end up with this really weird, pointy bit of fabric. And then to do our mandala, what we're going to do is we're going to wrap this point with bands that kind of concertina and go in funny directions. So I'm going to take one. So if I wanted just a circle around the end, I would just put that like that. But what I want, well, I might do a circle in the middle actually. So I'm going to start like that. I'm going to make this really strong. And then what we want to do is we want to put bands connecting these along funny lines. So if I get this, we'd have maybe one going this way and then another one going this way. Now to get your fabric to fold up and do that properly, what you're going to do is you're going to pinch it together like so. So you're going to bring 2 points which are not opposite each other and pinch them together, and that point where they meet there, that's where you're going to put your elastic band round. So you're going to end up with this really odd wiggly shape. Now normally I would do a mandala with thread, to be honest, but considering we haven't mixed our dye yet, I'm going to do it quickly with elastic bands to show you how it comes out. It's not as easy putting the elastic bands on with a plaster on my thumb. So yeah. So We've done a point going that way, so now I want a point going that way. So I'm folding it back on itself, and I'm going to be, where that point meets, I'm going to put another elastic band. And this is where it becomes all wiggly. Just trying to make sure that I do this really tight. Flatten that out again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my next point using the same elastic band, I think. So I'm just kind of folding in a weird direction, backwards and forwards basically, making sure that everything stays nice and flat, and I can tuck everything through, and my camera's gone out of focus again. Hopefully you can see when I flatten those points out again, come on, how this is kind of creating this weird shape. So, that point there, I think, will go up to here, and we'll put another elastic band round. We're going to use quite a big one this time. Now what you want to make sure is all these pieces of fabric that you've folded up beautifully, that they stay folded up. What you don't want is them to get really weird. Let's make sure I'm doing this right. So yeah, those stay nice and folded. I'm going to put another elastic band around here. I'm getting quite bored of this camera not focusing properly. Okay. I'm going to end up giving up. Okay guys, this camera really is getting on my nerves, so I'm going to finish off this last wrap in front of you. So I've folded that over again, so hopefully you can see it's kind of gone really twisty and curvy. And I think I'm going to do a final circular wrap around the points at the end here. I would usually spend an awful lot more time on carefully folding a mandala, but for the purposes of, you know, half an hour to an hour on Facebook, we've done it a little bit quicker today. And move that up a tiny bit. Okay, so we've got all of our tie-dye ties set up. So what I want to do is I want to show you what each of them actually turns out like. So we started out with our random fold, didn't we? I'm going to actually move this web camera out of the way because I'm not going to use it again. So our random ball, it comes out looking like this. So that's a lovely kind of just random dyed pattern. that's our random. Next we did our peaks, didn't we? So that's where we pinch our fabric and we pull it up into a peak and then wrap it, and that ends up giving you these lovely circles. So that's our random circles in our peaks. Then we did our concertina folded on the diagonal, and this creates a lovely diagonal stripe for you guys. And you can see in the middle there, hopefully, down here, where those folds are, it creates this lovely little concertina pattern. So that's our folded diagonal concertina. And then we did, that elastic band's broken, just a second, and to make sure that that's tied up and it doesn't come undone in the tie-dye. Okay, then we did our square fold, and the square concertina fold comes out like this. And I particularly love this one. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. So that's our square. And then we did our triangular concertina fold. And that comes out like this. So you can see when you do regular folding, it comes out with a much more kind of rhythmic pattern. And then finally we attempted a kind of snowflake mandala fold. Muslin's quite a chunky fabric actually to do this with, but hopefully you can see, put it up this way, where our pattern kind of goes in and out. So that's our snowflake mandala fold. So we've got all of our wraps of tie-dye ready to go. Remove our pre-made stuff out of the way. What we need to do now is we need to make our dye. So Abby's saying that she's going to speak to me tomorrow. It'd be lovely to see you tomorrow. So I need a measuring jug to mix my dye in, and I need a bucket for my dye as well. Now, I need 6 litres of warm water, about 40 degrees. So that's not hot to put your hand in, it's just nice and warm. So I'm going to get 6 litres of hot water. So yeah, that's about 2 litres. So when I put my hand in the water, it's not red hot, it's just nice and warm. So I need 3 jugs like that. Now the reason I'm going to the back sink, guys, is because it has a water boiler on its tap. So the water comes out consistently hot from that tap. Of water in my bucket. Now, according to the instructions on this dye-on packet of dye, I need to dissolve my dye into 500 millilitres of warm water. Now, I don't want to use my plastic kitchen jug to do that with. What I wanted to use was the metal bowl that's usually in the kitchen here, which seems to have disappeared. Yeah, black actually. missing. The little metal bowl, the stainless steel bowl, the little one. It was in the cupboard last week. Just bear with me 1 second, guys, while I try and find the bowl that I need. Right, what could I mix the dye in that's not going to actually dye the plastic? Just 1 second, guys. Guys, I'm back. Right, what we'll do, Cheryl's just going to get the bowl that I need. We will measure our salt out that we need to use. So, the instructions say that we need 250 grams of salt for our packet of dye. If I can get into it. So this is just regular table salt, guys. You don't need anything fancy. And I've zeroed my scales. So I need 250 grams. Looks like quite a lot of salt, doesn't it? Oh, thank you, honey. Really appreciate it. Okay, so 250 grams of salt. Put that to one side. That gets dissolved into your warm water. And you really do want to make sure that it is thoroughly dissolved, because this is what fixes your dye. So we're going to give that a good stir. And we'll keep stirring it while we mix our dye as well. So I'm going to cut the top off the packet. And when we pour the dye in the bowl, it's not going to look very much like blue. In fact, when we put the fabric into the dye, you're going to think it looks very purple. But as I say, we will dissolve this in 500 mils of warm water. So we'll put the dye in. If I switch you to my other camera very quickly, hopefully I can show you what that dye looks like. So it's like a white powder, and we're going to mix that up with 500 millilitres of warm water. Okay, so when I pour this in, hopefully, you'll be able to see how that dye activates as we put the water in. So it's half a litre. I'm going to keep stirring my salt. And perhaps if I bring this over here, I can show you a little better. Turn my camera up a bit. I'm going to mix this dye until you can't feel any of the granules of the dye left in the bottom. So hopefully you can see, if I bring it up the edge, that colour dissolving into the water. That still sounds really granular to me. And I've still got loads of salt to dissolve in here. So we're just going to keep mixing. Go back to my dye and stir that up. And I think what I'll do is, because the camera appears to be behaving itself a bit better now, I'm going to switch to both views for you guys. I'll move this along slightly. I'll move this along slightly. So you can see some of the tie-dye effects we've got in our fabrics here. That's my favourite, the squares. And we're going to just make sure that that dye is completely dissolved. And then what we're going to do, because my salt is definitely dissolved, is we're going to pour the dye into the dyeing bucket. I might just take a little bit more. And there, hopefully you can see, there's no powder left. We'll put that to one side to wash. And I think we'll move this camera over again so you can see into the dye bucket. So obviously this is a black bucket and you can't see the colour of the dye very well, which I apologise for, but I just had to grab what I could. You could use just a normal washing up bowl to do this in, or if you've got a stainless steel sink at home, it's absolutely fine to actually do it in the sink. Just make sure you don't have things around that you want to get splashed with dye. So all we need to do now, the last thing, is we need to drop our dye, our tie-dye, into our bucket. So if I dip this in, what I'll do is I'll bring it back up again for you to see the dye taking on. So I've dipped that in and pull it out again, and hopefully you can see that is the dye coming in and being taken on by the tie-dye. Now if you wanted to do something called an ombre dye, where you end up with kind of white or very, very light to dark dye, what you would do is you'd use something like a clothes horse and you'd pre-dampen your fabric like we already have, and you dip it in like this, and hopefully you can see, maybe if I do it up here, where on this side it's not a hard edge where I've dipped it in, and that's because the fabric was damp, so it's kind of just graduated nicely. And over the course of a few hours, what you would do is you would have it dipped in, but then you would bring it up slightly, and then you would bring it up some more, and then bring it up some more, and you'd end up with this lovely graduated dyed piece of fabric. But we're tie-dyeing, so we're dipping everything in. So we're literally just going to drop our fabrics in, make sure that they're fully covered, and as I say, it looks really purple, doesn't it? But trust me, this is the same dye as I used for the other fabrics, and it will come out purple. So this is our mandala. Again, if I dip this in to show you,